Cool. All right, Chris, welcome to the Sharpening Strength podcast. So excited to have you on here, and thanks for coming on today.
Oh, thanks, Dave. I'm real excited as well. I've been looking forward to it.
Yeah, great to have you on here. And I just want to kick things off initially by having you give listeners an overview of your story and your journey, both personally and professionally.
Okay, so my name's Chris Ruano, and I currently work in the fire service for a large municipal kind of agency. But what I do specifically is a lot of wildland fire training, and that's like where I specifically focus. But my background, just kind of, it's something coming out of high school I was interested in, the fire department, fire service. I just kind of got led there by hearing friends talking about it and hey, check this out. And once I kind of started actually visiting some fire stations and things like that, I really felt kind of gravitated, towards I knew I didn't want to work indoors, for long periods of time. And I was kind of attracted to the outdoors. I grew up in a rural area. So grew up kind of in the hills and in the brush there in Southern California, around where we live in the mountains and things. So I thought it'd be a good fit. And, the more I met people, they seemed to really love their job. And I think that's what really attracted me to it, is the guys were really having fun and they didn't make it look like work. So, I think that's probably the experience for a lot of folks that get interested in the fire service. So, and then even at a young age, I was kind of always mindful of one day having a family and being able to, have the things that were important to me and spend time in life the way that I thought I would like to, like I said, even as a young man. So, kind of considered that, the job security and things. So, but yeah, as soon as I started getting involved as a young man, really quickly saw how difficult it was. And it was really, really hard. Everybody around me in the academies and the things that I did as part of training to prepare myself, it was really, really hard and really struggled. But then I actually, I learned about myself that I could actually do this, and I started to do well and was finishing towards the top of my classes. And I think just that was encouraging as a young man, coming up going, hey, I think I can do this and I'm pretty good at it. So I've always kind of been attracted to the hard work. So I got exposed to some wildland just through some academy and training. And it was definitely the most difficult part of the training. And I really wanted to do that because it was so hard. It just, I had respect for those folks that were doing that line of work. So I went that route as I was choosing what to do to get into the fire service. So I went and worked hard, but I got on with the hotshot crew for the Forest Service in Southern California. I did that for a few seasons, 2 years on a hotshot crew and 1 year on a Forest Service engine. On that wildland side, and really got to travel and see a lot of the country. I had, in my early 20s, I had never been out of state, and I got to go all over the country. So that was really fun. And then at 23, got hired on a fire department. And it's where I've been ever since. So over 20 years on the department that I work for. And in the last 10 years, I went back to the wildland and just been running crews as a foreman, 4 years as an inmate crew foreman, running inmate firefighters on wildland hand crews. And then the last 4 years or so on our paid crews for our agency. So that's pretty unique niche in the fire service. Most folks are probably, they're either station firefighters or, we have large amount of people in the country that are those wildland firefighters. But our department is kind of, I don't know, I think of it like a three-legged race, because we have 2 feet in the wildland, because that's specifically what we do in my current assignment in our section. But we still have 1 foot in the municipal. We're not just seasonal, where a lot of those wildland folks are. We're year round, and we respond to the floods like Montecito, or if an earthquake were to happen, we'd be utilized for that, even though we're just hand crews. But I still love what I do. 43 years old now, and I have a family, been happily married for almost 20 years. Got a couple of teenage boys, and that's pretty fun as well, because now they're kind of curious about what they want to do, and they start asking me about my job and my career. And so I'm kind of, talking to them about that, and they can do whatever they want, but I'm definitely going to help them if they want that. So, getting to lead them that way, and starting to work out with them, and things. So, and just now on the fitness side, I guess. So that's kind of just my story, professionally. But and then on the fitness side, like I was saying, I've kind of, I don't know, I guess just the challenge part I've always liked. And so recognizing things that were hard for me or hard work, I was attracted to that and wanted to improve and put myself in those like uncomfortable situations or challenges, I guess you'd say. Continued to do that, and then once I was hired, I was kind of just always interested in fitness. I always kind of found myself, not, I wasn't the top every time, but probably the top third of on the fitness side. Wherever I found myself in academies or teams of people. So once I got hired, I was interested in the fitness as well and keeping that going, in my 20s. And, our department had a little bit of a fitness program. I was kind of interested in that. It was just a quick kind of a personal trainer overview and course to help folks get healthier in the fire station. That's basically kind of all it was, no structure or anything. And then like a lot of people my age, about 10 years ago, CrossFit got real big. And then, all of a sudden being able to challenge myself physically was good. And I dove deep into just a lot of different fitness things on actually the mechanics of movement. And, I changed my running style, kind of for longevity, kind of more like the minimal running style. And I'm glad I did that. But really just kind of interested in fitness and continuing to push myself, and that took me through my 30s. And then now in the last, 10 years or so, it's been more, I've just kind of been more mindful and 20 years or so of experience and seeing, we're really, I begin to have an opinion, I guess, before I'm just following all the trends and following everything. And I get to kind of have an opinion and prioritize what I've learned and what I think we should be doing and how it applies to what I'm doing for a career. So I was part of a paid crew, and they had a very, very, like elite training, we would train, we trail run, miles or hike, and then intense workout, like CrossFit style workout. And then we still had to do our job for the rest of the day. So as far as physical workload, it was very, very high. And it was, as I said, not seasonal, but year round. So definitely the durability and the resilience aspect plays big, especially as I age. They're in their 20s. They can probably just pull it off, no matter what. But just, and I still want to be a leader. I don't want them to be able to just doing everything without me, and I can't participate and be part of a team. That's important to me on the leadership side, to be able that they know that I can do what needs to be done, when the time comes, and that I'd be an asset, not a hindrance to the team. So then just training kind of changed a little bit, as our agency even became, more questioning, what we're doing, and our guys getting hurt, and how do we justify it? And that's another thing I learned on the leadership side was working out at work. If I'm in charge, then there's certain liability, and I kind of own it. If number one, if people get hurt or if my guys aren't prepared. So it's easy to find workouts or let somebody make up a workout that's going to crush everyone. But when we still have to do a ton of work the rest of the day, maybe it's not the smartest way to go about it. And I'm the one who's going to be held accountable ultimately, for what we're doing that day if I'm in charge. So with that approach, just want to learn more about programming. We were doing a lot of programming, like we kind of, the high functioning team that we was very interested in, like, really hard in elite training. And we were doing some, it was advertised for like special ops forces, and things like that. It was soft elite. We were doing a lot of their programming, which was great, but it was probably, I was kind of burning out the guys a little much for what we had to do going to fires, So just started to learn about training and programming. And then I went to the End of 3 Fitness, did their training course, and kind of, I was just really like the well-balanced, trying to be well-rounded. And that's always been my priority, is trying to be well-rounded, and keep it going for the whole career, because that's really how I can justify it, So I learned a lot, and I applied a lot of what I learned there to programming, and that built a whole year of programming that I've been doing for a couple of years. I do it all the time, and when I get my team doing it, when we can, and it's available to them. But I'm not there every day, and they have 3 different supervisors, and we all have different priorities and ways of going about stuff. So that's kind of, I guess that's quite a bit covered already, but that's kind of where we're at on the professional side and the fitness side on my story a bit.
Very cool, Chris. No, that's very awesome sharing all that, and gives us a really good picture of that, because that's kind of where we want to pivot here, is especially for the firefighters out there, for the civil service athletes in general. There's definitely some different training considerations, program considerations that need to be addressed, and those are some of the things I want to get into with you, because you help design some of the programs for the firefighters to go through specifically. Then you said a year-long track that they're going through.
So well, basically, it's pretty much like the PT. So, most firefighters, they're working in a fire station, a crew of, anywhere from 3 people, to 15 or so, in a really, really big house. But, our teams on our wildland crews, there's a team leader, which when I'm on duty, it's myself as a foreman. And then there's all the crew personnel, which would be, on a completely full day, it's like 18, maybe up to 20 if we were all the way fully staffed. But at least 12 to, probably 12 to 17 on a regular basis is the size of group that we have. So just trying to come up with training that we can do. And I geared it toward the fire season, being, if it's like if we're athletes, and that's kind of how I started looking at it, is we're career athletes, and we really, since they're not seasonal employees in Southern California, everybody knows, this last couple of years have been a little slower, but in wintertime, we were getting all those big fires in December and February even. So we really didn't have an off season, but just kind of taking that athlete approach where, trying to peak us for the summertime and for fire season, and how we need to be ready for that. Definitely fire. It's all geared toward, tactical athletes or fire services is what I was thinking about, but even specifically for our wildland crews and for fire season and for summertime. And, summertime, it's just those long, hot days. And even folks that work in the fire stations, it's like, it is hotter. Maybe guys are going on vacation, so they don't have access to all the equipment. For sure, all of our federal crews, those guys that are touring the whole country, they don't even have time to work out. They're not even at a station. They're just out on the mountain for the entire summer. So, but gearing it toward, the wildland side of things a little more, because I think most folks, even on any department, they've done like myself. Maybe they've worked for wildland agencies on hotshot crews prior to landing their like long-term career on a municipal department. And I think they'd all agree that was, the most in shape. I hear that a lot, that, hey, that was the most in shape, or most intense, or, the hardest stuff I had to do. So if I can program for that athlete, and then, anyone else can scale it for them for the, the regular in the fire station year round type of thing. So that's kind of what I structure, but I am trying to create something that we can do every day. So that's what I look at is being able to do the PT, something for us every day. I do incorporate rest days. But I just put up like 6 or 5 workouts a week, a couple rest days in there. And then, just gives options to folks. And I did it on using Train Heroic software. So there's videos and things like that. And I've gotten into posting a lot of videos and stuff, and really latched on to Sandbag Training for our application, incorporating that, because again, training with large groups and departments, we don't have a lot of money a lot of times and equipment, but sandbags are pretty cheap and easy to make. But just going about building strength, and what I've kind of done, just to kind of give an overview, and again, envisioning this tactical athlete is, 4 cycles a year, and really focusing on strength on one and building that raw strength. And then, developing power on the next one, and then a little more strength endurance, get us ready for the fire season. And then I take a few months and kind of focus on more body weight or bands or limited equipment with us traveling around. And again, at summertime, a lot of people, they're even if they vacation or whatever, they're not going to stick to a program. So I enjoyed that, taking a few months off of the barbell even, and just doing a lot of one arm, one leg stuff, and balancing balancing it out, but still making it challenging and actually just having a program and a plan. And I think that's what is different about training as a team and in the way that I've done it. And then I'm trying to do it. And then I'm just trying to even now educate and work with some other team leaders on their agencies on coming up with a program, because, you know, you can leave PT up to anybody, and it's easy to go on, you know, a website or Instagram and find a workout that's going to get everybody going for the day. But having a long-term plan and working toward goals and even running assessments periodically to see how you're doing and how you're improving. You know, I get asked occasionally with my guys, well, you know, are they getting better? Or, you know, if you never test yourself and have parameters, then when they ask, you're not going to have any data. So that's kind of how I look at it as a fitness approach. But definitely focus on strength. It's really based on strength and building strength, and then keeping that through those summer months when we're just, you're not going to be able to go on a strength focused program in the summertime when you're just burning way too many calories and can't even hardly get in the gym a lot of days. So just being mindful of that and having something we can do every day. And 1 hour PT is what I focus on. Just get it done. You know, you're not going to, most of the time, you know, you're not going to be able to work out all day whenever you feel like it. But the bottom line, I think, on what I try to be mindful and responsible about is teaching and building good mechanics and building strength, but always being ready for work still, you know, to balance that, where you're not being shot out. So using percentage-based strength training, you know, that's what we use the barbells for, is dialing that in, dialing the dosage so I can still build strength and getting the right response that I'm needing, you know, to adapt the athlete, but not burning them out. Because it's a long day. It's a long day, especially what we do out in the wildland. You know, we're not indoors for large portions of the day. We're just outside all day. So we do the workout, typically a trail run on top of that. And then we got, you know, manual labor to do, whether, you know, hand tools or training for our job in one aspect or another, or going to incidents. So.
Yeah, that's so much good info there. And I think the big summary with all that, it shows how dialed in some of this programming has to be too. And I think it's so cool the shift you have from just working out as a crew versus, okay, we're athletes, we're getting ready for the game, for the season, we're peaking at different times where we know when to push it, when to dial it back. And I think that's so cool to have that approach in a very systematic way to make sure that people are performing when they need to be performing. And I want to jump a little more into this, because unlike regular athletics where I played college football, we know when the first game is, we know when every practice is, we know when the game is, it's circled on our schedule. You guys don't have as much of that luxury. There is some seasons that it tends to follow, it sounds like, but it's not, you don't know exactly when that exact peaking time is going to be, where we know to the date, like this is when we're going to have to be peaking. And how do you balance because there's got to be, people have to be physically ready, they have to be mentally ready for something like that, but how do you have it so that they're not feeling beat up, like you said, that they're not feeling sore going into when they need to be performing at their highest level?
You know, I think I just try to, I don't know, I guess maybe sometimes you know, when I work out, you know, my wife is great. You know, she even does our same programming because it's percentage based and everything, you know, it's still applicable. And my teenagers are doing the same thing, even though they're newer athletes. But we get newer athletes a lot who have never done any kind of, you know, maybe their team or their sport, maybe they were just cross country runners, and you know, they're in great shape and can do the job. But you know, there's a big learning curve. You know, I mean, like I said, I'm in my 40s now, and I'm constantly learning. It takes a long time to get some of these movements and techniques down. So I have a lot of new athletes where I'm just trying to teach them even just how to move. And so that's very hard. You know, I think that helps having a platform that I put it on where there's videos, and hopefully the people that are interested will dive a little deeper on that. And there's always going to be people that working out just isn't their thing. And so they're not going to take that much interest. You know, they're just trying to get through it, and they do a great job. But, you know, really trying to get the ones that are interested in their, you know, whether they're like the meatheads or whether they're, you know, like a CrossFitter or something, you know, whatever it is, but that they can help with teaching that. And that's I'm mindful of that where I work. And I think that's why I'm really kind of trying to, as I keep moving forward, I don't want to just have like a training program that people can do, even though I really love it. I think it's outstanding, and it's still really varied and challenging. And I really enjoy the workouts every single time. But having, I want to empower team leaders to be able to kind of get this out to their people and not get people hurt. So just on the soreness, and I guess the dosing is people just they have to feel out how they're doing that day and assess. I mean, there's so many, you kind of alluded to that in the last question on, we call it the human factors. There's a whole human factors thing on the fire side. It's all there. There's the objective things and the obvious hazards, but then we're working with people. So there's who knows what they're bringing to the table that day and how they're doing. Right. And I think, one thing I've just tried to help with that is every warm up I use is like an accessory movement warm up to prep for whatever work we're doing that day. Like, so if it's a squat day, then we're doing squat accessory work, a lot of one-legged work, but just taking that warm up time to feel out how you're feeling that day as you get moving and seeing what's going on and how you're going to be able to perform that day. And on the intensity side, everybody's competitive, but I don't do a lot of extremely high intensity, maybe once, twice a week, but definitely not every day. But just being able to sustain and repeat work capacity, we do a lot of that, like, so timed rest and just working for us. That's why we do a lot of, on what would be called a Metcon or, the cardio portion or whatever. We'll use sandbags, and it's just kind of getting work done, continuously without stopping and just repeating that, because that's how we work. But as far as not getting them too sore, I just have to watch guys sometimes, and people just have to be honest with themselves. I mean, they're responsible for their own, and they know the job that we have to do that day. They know how hard they're pushing, and some days you can really add a little bit more weight. It's too light, and other times, you're not feeling it. You're gonna get hurt if you push it. Like today, as a matter of fact, I was working out this morning with my son and one of his friends, and it was clean and jerks, and I hadn't been doing those for a while. I missed a couple of the workouts, when we hit that prior. So, I always use percentage based when I'm doing the strength portion, but I just back it off a little bit, and people need to be able to do that. And when I work with even some partners and friends at work, you'll find a PT buddy, and they'll, hey, what are you doing? Yeah, I'd like to join you. Usually I kind of convince them to do less weight, and focus more on the movement. It's humbling. Everybody wants to go out there and crush it and show how strong they are, and whether it's timed and they want to do more reps or whatever it is. But just, if you're truly trying to do this year round, like we are, year round for the entire career, not just for like the fire season, for example, not just to prepare to get to a fire academy or, one event, but to do this, like, as long as I can. You gotta, each day is kind of different. And, but I use, on the strength work, I use percentages to as a guide to go off of and try to stick to that. And then, some days I can do more weight. Some days it's heavy weight's not available. Other times, it's too heavy, I have to make adjustments. But I really like to try to teach people to make those decisions and to make the right ones, and to actually learn for themselves how the workout of the day that I programmed, how it's going to work for them that day and what they're trying to do, what we're trying to work on.
Yeah, that's great. The objective piece can be a nice way to dial that back a little bit with percentages. And the athletes we work with in our programming, it's very, when we give them a percentage, it's like, okay, this is a set number. I'm not asking for a variance yet, educating still the education piece of subjectively, if it says, say, 75% and you're feeling drained, you got 3 hours of sleep last night and you didn't eat well the past couple of days, or like you said, you missed a couple lifts, then subjectively being able to know, like, hey, it's okay if I drop this down a little bit, hit crisp reps, good good form with them, make sure to stay with proper mechanics can be a bigger thing than trying to just push to achieve a number that's objectively on the sheet for the day.
Oh yeah. And, and it's hard to get that message across. Like I said, when I'm there, I can do it. Even when they're not doing my workouts and they're just doing their own, I don't know how well I hear guys talking on the crew sometimes, and how much they blasted their legs or whatever. And maybe they're exaggerating a little bit, but I mean, I've been doing it a long time, so I can still do what I need to do even with soreness. Some folks, I don't know, there's a mental aspect where all of a sudden, I can't make it up the hill, or, and then me, then I'm kind of like, well, what are you doing? What's the matter with you? You idiots? What are you guys thinking? Where it's going to be 100 degrees this whole week and you guys are just freaking blasting your legs. So, I mean, I do the same thing too, but I kind of, I guess I just am more mindful and I'll watch the throttle. I think younger athletes for sure, newer athletes, they don't know that yet. They don't know how to work, where that line is. And I see that a lot on the training academies that I'm involved with. They just don't know yet what it feels like to hit that point and to recover from it. And they just push past and blow themselves out. And now they're just unable to continue, or they get injured.
Well, I think in the population you work with too, though, there is a little more immediate feedback with how much just volume of stuff you guys are doing outside of the weight room, where a lot of the struggles, I think, with maybe the average population, the person in a just more of a business role or something, is that they don't get that immediate feedback. So they think they're recovering fine when there's not that, because they're just working out and they're going and sitting at a desk. There's not that immediate feedback to go like, wow, I really am feeling drained, because your guys are going and trail running after and doing a lot of manual labor. So you get a little more feedback in that, where some people, it takes a little bit longer to learn that, because if you work out hard, you could be pushing past your recoverable limit, but you're sitting at a desk. So it's not necessarily showing itself until a year later, 5 years later, sometimes longer. But that feedback's different in your population, I think. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I think so. And, I can speak. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that as you were talking about on the recovery side, I mean, depending on where you work and what your job is, I'm kind of speaking right now more specifically for the wildland, type of work that we do in our fire crews. And I'll probably be going back to the station really soon for a short time, but it is different when you're, so most firemen in the stations, you'll know your workload and the run load, and you might have access to, the station where you can have great, recovery tools, whether in the form of nutrition or, just you can really pace it off of your workload, on how busy your station is and how many fires you get or things like that. But for the most part, in the fire station, you can still recover. It's the mental stress and the sleep deprivation that you're really going to suffer from, for sure. I mean, I'm outside all day, every day for the most part. And my guys, that's the recovery, is just the exposure to the heat and the exposure to the elements. We work out and then we work all day, we're working outside all day long. So the recovery side, it's not like they're certainly, not like in a cubicle where they're just going to be able to have, slam protein all day and drink gallons of water and spend all day focusing on their recovery. But the fire stations, where different people work, I think you just have to figure out what yours is, what your situation is, and how to get the recovery best, for the situation you're in. And like for us, PT works best in the morning. There may be fire stations where people work at, and it's going to have to be in the evening, or when you go home, you're not going to be able to work out the same time you do when you're at work. But just making it a priority and having a plan. And I guess, that I think anybody that's successful at whatever they're doing, whether, fitness or professionally, if you have a plan and you work hard to stick to it, and you don't beat yourself up too bad when you can't stick to the plan, and you just get back on program and pick up where you left off, long term, that's how you're going to get the results. It's sticking with it for a long term, not just a few months or weeks. And I think the recovery side is the same thing. Like I where I currently work, I don't really have access to a lot of recovery, and the days are pretty full, and I don't spend the time that I need to on recovery, for sure. As I get banged up more as time goes on, I need to start doing that. And I'm doing a little bit more certainly than I used to 10 years ago. But, everybody's situation is different. But I think just that, like we were talking about, having a plan and a program. And that's really probably, like, if I had like a message, that's what it boils down to, certainly on the fitness side, but everything else as well. But I really just try to get folks have a program and something they're following, instead of just doing random all the time. It's just haphazard. And then, like I said, and what I deal with, I'm responsible sometimes for what folks are doing. And if I start to break them down or get them injured, or people start asking the why of what I'm doing, if I don't have an answer, I'm not going to have very much credibility or freedom and latitude to do that. But if I do it responsibly and I have a plan, a program, and I can lay it out for a chief or somebody that asks me about what we're doing and why, then they kind of they get off my back about it, and they have more confidence in what I'm doing, and I can get more support, whether that's resources or, ability to speak to more folks and get the word out on the department. But that's kind of how I look at that.
Yeah, and recovery is super important, but it's not always plausible. And we're after better. We're not after perfect, especially I'm sure in the population you're working with. Ideal recovery is not going to be, you're not someone training for the CrossFit Games or something that is, or the Olympics, who's just working out and recovering is pretty much their full-time job. But you guys have a very much a full-time physical job on top of all the training. But it can't be understated enough that the intelligent programming, I don't want to speak the message that it can replace recovery, but intelligent programming can go a long way in needing to recover or spend less time recovering when you're intelligently warming up, programming the movements, making sure that you're not just beating people up. That can have the need for recovery to be a little less than if you're just redlining every day and pushing metcons and doing long grinding type stuff. And is that something you see as an issue, and maybe not in the people you directly work with, but generally speaking for the tactical athlete?
I think so. We're those high achievers and people that are trying to push their own personal limits all the time. I'm constantly trying to see how long I can continue to be capable, as age goes on in my position and things like that. But I think people are just competitive a lot of times by nature, for sure. I mean, this is a fitness podcast we're talking about, and so a lot of people listen to this. They're that's kind of where they're at. They're all about it, and I think just long term. I know for me, like I was sharing with you, the kind of programming mindset and approach that I do. Long term, like in the fall at the end of the fire season, that's when it's just a full on strength bias cycle. And it's just, by the end of those 3 months, you're sick of back squatting and some of these things. You're just like, oh, not again. But I know, like, coming up now, next month, I'll be starting more of a body weight banded kettlebell. And I actually kind of look forward to that. I look forward to the recovery side. Like, okay, I know I'm not going to be under such heavy load all the time, on, less barbell stuff, and programming that in where, you can tune yourself up and give yourself time to learn maybe how to move a little bit better, not under so much load. Cause it is hard when you're training with folks. Definitely the tendency is to always put on weight. And especially when, when we're only giving them an hour to work out, they want to like hit whatever it is they want to hit and put weight on and make the most of the time. But, I guess just trying to show an example for them and give them ideas, and whether you're working out with people that have been working out a long time, like I would consider myself to be that, even though I wasn't ever a competitor, kind of that thing, but still sustaining, training at a high level over a long period of time. Just trying to be smart about it. And then other people are getting exposed to it and learning about it. And I really do change up the movements a lot and try to incorporate it. Cause for me, I can't do the cycles that are just so repetitive. I do like the variety and I enjoy that. And so I mix it up as much as possible, but mixing it up on purpose, choosing them specifically. But somebody else looking at it would think that it's probably, pretty random. But you're just giving people ideas, and then at least if they've worked with me for a while, they've been exposed to a lot of different ways to move and different ways of looking at it and different kinds of conditioning as opposed to just running. I mean, certainly in our career in academies, and especially in the wildland, it's just running typically. That's just how the culture was, and most folks don't even mess with any weights, and it's expensive to outfit a crew of 20 people with a facility that you can train in. But yeah, just I guess that approach of being mindful of what you're doing and tuning yourself up if you need to, if you have to do something different that day, having options, because sometimes I really like the warm-ups. I told you they were accessory warm-ups, and sometimes just repeating that warm-up is a great workout for the day, because the movements are great movements for just decreasing the loading. But if you want to make that as a workout, And I'll do that with newer people a lot of times that I don't feel comfortable with them doing clean and jerks or some kind of compound movement on a barbell under load. I'll just have them continue to do rounds of that warm up, and they're getting stronger and they're learning to move.
Yeah, and not to go off on too far a tangent, but warm up is one of the biggest overlooked things in the program. If people don't know how to warm up properly, and they maybe just do some light stuff. When your warm up is specifically targeting what's going to be done for the day and is hitting key mobility spots and strength spots, for a lot of people, when they try a warm up like that, they're like, "Wow, this is hard, but it feels good and it's challenging." And that can be a great way to hit some of those recovery things and those other things we were talking about. But I do want to pick your brain a little more on, so how do you have these conversations with people that are newer, where you're a little more experienced, you're training for longevity. Newer people coming in, we know, are not always training for longevity. They don't care about the long game. They're pushing it hard. How do you have these conversations? Because the perfect program, if you have percentage and everything, the perfect program, if they're not following it correctly, is not going to create results. It can lead to that burnout and people overtraining. How are you having any of these conversations, or whether it's directly with the people working out or the people under you that you're leading? How are you educating? How are you having these conversations to create that buy-in?
So for myself, and the whole buy-in topic is that's a big challenge, because I mean I love it and I'm all about it, and but the buy-in is a whole nother thing. I mean I've been around long enough on my agency that I'm blessed with the ability to be able to do the workout that I want to do. It's taken a long time to be able to have that, to be in that position where I can do that, and like they don't really get to pick the workout. It's kind of based on what the leader wants to do, or sometimes they don't even work out depending on the leader. They just, will just do other stuff. I mean, we're not really, working out it's like a blessing, and it's some extra, it's a privilege, we just need to hike and swing tools based on our job description. So, how necessary is it? I think it's very necessary, but like you're talking about, how do you get the word out? Well, the fire service, we drill every day on something. I mean, there's so much that we have to do and deal with, all the various, hazards and incidents that we go to. There's so much to train on and drill on. But I've noticed, I mean, maybe once a year or something, we don't even talk fitness, even though we work out. We're mandated. Most agencies, it's mandatory. PT, the public expects you to be prepared to do the job. So, we have that as part of our day. We work 24-hour shifts when you're in the fire station, and it's part of the day. And we do it every day, but we never drill on it. I mean, unless somebody's interested on their own and wants to find stuff out, that's all they're going to get. We just don't drill on it. So, of course, if I'm leading the workout, it's like a session. I'm going to say why we're doing this and that. But even without that, I think getting the word out, like I told you, I do four different cycles, and really what the focus of that cycle is, I think even just having that, like, so just a few times a year, like, hey, for the next few months, this is why we're doing what we're doing, or focus on this for the next 3 months, focus on strength, and strengthen these lifts, the deadlift, because this is, we're picking stuff up off the ground, and squatting and one-legged, whatever it is, but at least just having some short drill. That's one thing I think in my culture is explaining, having a plan, number one. And then second is just, if you don't have access to people every day, the team that you're training with, or your agency, maybe you can just put out like a quarterly, your agency will just let you put out a quarterly bulletin, or, and kind of like I do and you do, is just put out content. But, being able to do that for your agency, where just a few times a year, but giving some people to consider, and focusing on something for that portion of time and getting the word out. Because like I said, how do I prepare them? I get to brief them as we're doing the workout. Hey, we're doing this, is what we're trying to do. On the conditioning, this is what we're going to work today. We're really focusing on just continuing to work, or are we focusing on, an all out effort? If you don't have somebody talking you through it, you really don't know why you're what the goals are. But as time goes on, I would really like to, help, like I said, those agencies, and even on my own agency, as things go down the road, and maybe even once I leave the agency, continue to help out the fire service in just having content more readily available. Because we train in the academy. It's tough for some people. but it's not that arduous. It's just mental. You just got to stick with it. But I don't know of just about any agency that when you finally get in the field that there's a department, like, I guess, not a workout of the day, or at least it's something, a resource that they can look at every day and have access to, that is, it takes a lot of time and money, and and then also you're dealing with, our population as union members. You can't make anybody do anything, right? Your union members, you're not going to force anything upon them. It has to be all elective, and there's a million different fitness programs, and they're all outstanding. So there's even that, like, do you really have something for everybody? So that's why I just try to go well-rounded, so that no matter what they're doing, maybe they can apply what I'm trying to show them to it. And for sure, I definitely believe in that strength base. I think it's underutilized in the I think everybody knows about it, and they like to strength train, curls, the meathead kind of workouts, but when really doing it to build a base for long term, no one's really on a program and talking about that. So it's pretty difficult to have access to everybody. So it's just one of those things where you just got to drill on it and make it like a drill, and even if you can't do it every day, just do it occasionally.
Do you find the education and the some of that education around the program and those things, do you find having to push more people to get them ready, or do you find having to pull the reins back more on people to make sure that they're recovering properly? And
I would say on my population is probably more on the, because I'm my crew is most of the guys are all in their 20s, and they, if anything, I got to kind of make sure they're being smart about it, would probably be it, that they're pulling in the reins, because if they're brand new, they don't even know, that they can get hurt, because, they just think they're invincible. And then, and other guys even more experienced, they just, they're like, nope, I'm feeling good. I'm just going to go heavy and keep it moving and go for numbers or whatever it is they're working on. But yeah, it is, I would say it's harder to pull in the reins. I think just the general population as a whole in the last 10 years is way more fit and just exposed to, fitness, and is more just a part of life. I think it was, when I got on, it was pretty rare. The idea of PT sometimes was just going for a walk, walking around the park for, however many with the captain, and you're just kind of you're learning from that old guy, and you want to glean everything you can. So, but you're just kind of walking around the park, and you're like, well, this is the workout, I guess this is what we're doing today. But I would say by and large, just noticing the younger people coming in, even if fitness isn't really their thing they're all about, or their passion, they're definitely more exposed to it. They've heard of, harder things like CrossFit or things like that, where before it was just, people going to 24-hour fitness, or, there was actually like bodybuilders, and that was kind of it, or you had your long distance triathletes or marathon runners. But now I just think everybody's way more exposed, and certainly social media has a lot to do with that as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. And in your profession, or I guess a profession in general that's as physically demanding as yours is, what would you tell someone new coming in that's looking to do it for a long time? You have 20 plus years of good experience. Sounds like you stayed relatively healthy and injury free. That doesn't sound like that's the norm by any means. What would you recommend to someone starting out to strive for that kind of longevity?
So someone starting out, I would say, to just know why you're doing what you're doing. Don't just especially with social media, everybody wants to do something that looks cool, or it's the latest fad. And I mean, I check that stuff out all the time too. And, I see if there's a reason to incorporate it in what I'm doing, or, is it worth changing up whatever, but I'll evaluate it and check it out. But I think just having a plan, and I would tell younger athletes that you got to start with strength. You got to, like, when I have access, I put myself out there on social media a lot to just mentor and help more in the off season. Now it's getting the time of year where I'm just, so busy I can't do that. But in the winter, when I have more time, I enjoy directing people, because I remember when I was trying to come in, I just wanted information. I wanted to know what I needed to do. And certainly what we're doing for PT and what I'm doing, it's not, you don't need to do that as a, we exceed the standard by far of what it would take to do the job. We're definitely the overachievers probably in just the units that I've been working with. And but someone starting out is just you have to build a strength base, and you whatever most of the time whatever they're doing, I would say like 80% of the population, when they're getting ready for an academy or entering it, whatever they're doing, they're not pushing themselves hard enough. So, and I don't mean by putting more weight on the bar, but mentally they're not getting really uncomfortable pushing themselves. Currently, right now, I'm assigned to helping on a training academy that we have, a wildland training academy. And there's people in great shape, and they're in great gym shape. I mean, there's several times we'll see people that are just, they're shredded up, and they appear to be in great shape, and they work out on a regular basis, but they can't sustain like body weight push-ups for a long period of time, or those academy kind of things where you're holding a plank or holding in a push-up position, and then just working. I know a lot of people, it's grip strength is really what does them in on these academies. It's hard to hang on, and it's hard to hang on with gloves. And so I think for tactical athletes starting out would be have a strength base, make sure you have grip strength, and that the range of motion, I think would trump, strength. If I had to pick between the two, I would go for range of motion first, because we move in crazy positions, and you're never sure what's going to happen. Even just lifting a patient, somebody drops the other end of the gurney, and you'll be forced in a position that you weren't ready to be in. But I think those people that are more flexible, when they're in that position on purpose, when they're training, they're kind of comfortable with it. But if you're not putting yourself in some of these, positions where range of motion, you'll be forced into it when you're not ready. And then I think that's when people get hurt, is they're just not used to doing it. I mean, I remember there was always kind of a debate, when, I was interested in the fitness and stuff on the department, and we'd go out and do drills, and you'd always get the naysayers, and they're usually overweight or whatever, but they were like, I'm not doing that. I'm going to get hurt, and that was kind of the mentality of, why would I, do that, a deadlift, or why would I throw that, or do some of these things that, they just look at it as, I'm going to get hurt. Well, the mindset we would approach it is, no, you will have to do this at some point, and the first time you do this is probably when you're going to get hurt. So you should be comfortable with moving in that way, and having that in your toolbox. So I don't know, that's kind of one approach, but certainly coming in, you just don't, and I preach this, is just don't shoot for the minimum standard. Like you can ask what the minimum standard is, but that should never be what you're aiming for. Always just look to crush the minimum standard. And I even do that now. I mean, I've already landed the position that I want. I'm doing what I want and love. I'm not striving to do any of that, but I really try to just exceed the minimum standard, because there is a minimum standard, whether it's to get hired, if that's a minimum standard, certain benchmark or a time on an agility test, or if the minimum standard is the level that your crew operates at, and to keep up with everybody, that's the minimum. But you need to train way beyond that, because if you're sick, you're not going to hit. If you're training for the minimum and that's where you're at, you get sick, you're not going to meet the minimum standard. If you got some little up with your knee or your ankle or your shoulders just not feeling it, and you're at that minimum, you're not going to be there anymore, and you're going to put yourself at risk, put your crew at risk if they're waiting for you, or they gotta, you're a liability. So just train hard to really crush the minimum standard. And if you have self pride, which we have a lot of pride in what we do, and I've always admired those people that did well on things. So I've always tried to do well, not just do it, but do well, and then help other folks if they were interested, to push themselves harder, how I can help them out.
Crush the minimum standard. I love that. And what a good lesson too that's so applicable for the people you're working with, but just in life in general too, of people that in training, we can train and we can have our health just to get by. We can easily get through our days now with how comfortable our days have gotten, but there should be a level of, whether you need accountability elsewhere, whether that comes from within, being able to elevate above that and not just try and get by with it and try and crush it. So love that, Chris. I want to circle back on the mindset piece with something, as you were talking too. A lot of guys don't have that mental component. How do you develop that? How did you develop that personally, and how do you develop that with the people you work with?
I think like the mental side is and we get to do this in physical training, fitness all the time but having those, I don't know, I guess I've called it sometimes, go into that dark place where it's just you and your mind, and you're just making the decision to continue, even when it's hard. But that's really the mental toughness. Is it kind of ties in with meeting the minimum standard. That's not what you're shooting for, but you're really trying to do as much as possible, and to be able to help out maybe even somebody that can't hang that day, or whatever, and maybe it'll be, it could be me on a certain day, or whatever. But on the mental side is, I guess, just not being content and always pushing forward, that kind of like the lifestyle stuff. That's where, having goals, and then that's it. What do I need to do to get that? What do I need to do that? And then putting in the work to do it. And then the mental toughness of when things aren't going good, and you're really tired. And like I said, right now, just working around an academy, we're out there in harsh elements and temperatures that some folks maybe aren't accustomed to. But even if you're not accustomed to it, if you are mentally tough and you can get through each day, you're going to get better and more accustomed to it. But it's that you've already decided you're not going to quit. So now you're just going through it. You've already made the decision that you're not going to stop. So just going through it. But if it's questionable, you're like, you know what, maybe it is time to stop. Maybe it is time to quit. And then they just hang it up. But so mental toughness and whatever you need to do to challenge yourself in those ways, I feel, to get to that point of that tipping point of, should I stop or should I keep going? Oh, I can keep going. All right. Then that's what's up. I'm going to keep going. And, so building that in whatever aspect you need to build that area of your life that you need to exercise that in. But that's, for me, I think that's the mental toughness. It's not just doing hard work, because people they can outwork everybody, but they're still not even challenging themselves. That could be the case. But just, challenging yourself mentally and doing it for you, really, to see what you're capable of. And then, I think that's good leadership as well. You don't take that. You choose the hard work when you don't have to. I really, I still try to do that to this day. There's probably, we can get, there's way easier ways to do things sometimes, but I really do admire people that pick the hard work when they don't have to. Like even on my, whether it's firefighters like myself, or the crew members, the ones that will choose the harder jobs. I really respect them, because there's always going to be easier work and there's going to be hard work, and the ones that always jump on the easy work, I don't really have a lot of respect for those kind of people. And so I try to even, I probably don't always have to take the harder way, at the where I'm at now, but I try to, for a good example, and just even to challenge myself and to show that it's okay to even as a leader still jump in there and do the hard work.
That's great, Chris. And the last 5 minutes there of just some good leadership knowledge in general too, about minimum standards and choosing the hard route, whether that's directly in people in your line of work, or just in general, speaking of, like we talked about, of getting outside of comfort zones and choosing things, especially if we're in a position of leadership. If we get to a position of leadership and then start taking the easy route, or don't demonstrate those things ourselves, then what kind of effect does that have downstream in an organization, or whoever you're trying to lead?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's really great. I love the knowledge on that. And I want to transition a little bit here for the people listening too, into a little more about my notebook here, a little more personally speaking of, so transitioning into, you have this leadership role. You've been excelling at a high level for a lot of years. It's easy for people, and I'm sure you get people looking at life from the outside and thinking, easy to see that it's all together, easy to see that it's everything's great, family life's great, work's great, health is great, and all those things are great. But I think that can be a little harmful too for people maybe just starting out, or people that are aspiring to get to a leadership role like you have, or to achieve a level of health and fitness, or whatever their goals are. That can be potentially harmful for some aspiring men out there. And I think we'd both be the first to admit that we definitely don't have it all together, and our journey has been anything but easy. But for some people looking on the outside, that can be a little harder to see. So I was hoping if you didn't mind to be real with the listeners here, to share a challenge you've faced in the past or something you're currently going through that has been a big catalyst for your growth as a man, as a leader, as a husband, father, in any of those areas that you want to speak on.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I think like I have been in my mind, I consider myself personally, from what I set out to do and what my goals were growing up, I would consider, I'm a success in a successful position, that I've been able to achieve a lot of the goals that I've put in front of me. Um, but I think when you're at the very beginning, just the everybody has life, right? It's all life. It's not always easy all the time. And I was always, as I told you before, even as a young man, I was interested in having a family and leading that lifestyle. And there'll always be, stress in relationships, especially in a job that I chose, the path I chose to take, and it's certainly the case for any firefighter or anybody that has a job where you're not home every single night, and you're not really in control of when you get to come home. Um, but so relationships, not just, with your wife, certainly, and with, your kids, and not being there for things, but them still knowing that you love them and care about them, and that they're really the priority. I have this whole thing called work that I have to go to most days, but making them feel like they're the priority and they're important, and you know, being giving them what they need also. So that part, I think, for anybody that doesn't get to be home all the time, that one's tough, and that's something I never really considered. But being a type A and wanting to take care of business all the time, it's like, it's okay. I got to do this. I got to do that. Okay, how can I do this? How can I handle everything right? And I think it's easy to just take on way too much and overload. And fortunately, for me personally, on the spiritual side, I'm a Christian, and my relationship with God is a way that when it gets really, really hard, and you got to have, check yourself on the why and the what's going to keep you going. And for me, that was always, that keeps me grounded, and I kind of, that forms my perspective and worldview and relationship view, on how I'm going to interact with the people around me, and how I'm going to go about doing things, but just really checking who I am and what I'm about. So on the personal side, just having to do that, think through when you're starting out, you just think of, oh, I want this job, I want that. But when it comes to your lifestyle, and it's all the choices that you've made, the job that you've taken, the time that you spend at work, there's repercussions and consequences for that. Yeah, you might get in a new position, but what are you trading? What are you trading with your time? We only have so much time, and what you're trading off with that. So to be very intentional about that, and think it through a little bit, I guess, is what I would say to somebody starting out. Hey, it's a great job. I'm being mindful of my experience, of course. So when I'm thinking of me back then, if somebody's looking to do the same thing, hey, it's a great job, but here's the downside, and if once you're in, you're in. It's not like, I'm working for an agency that I can't just, it doesn't exist. I can't do the job that I'm doing right here. I can't just go to Miami and do the same thing. It just doesn't exist. Right. So, I guess just being intentional, but really the family is, when the job's done and you retire, it's going to be you and your family. So not forsaking and just taking care of those priorities as best you can. I mean, I could be home more. Absolutely. I wish I could. And I try to just keep myself in check. And if a lot of times my family is the ones that keep me in check, like, hey, we haven't seen you in a long time. It's time to be around. And so my wife is awesome. She's amazing, keeps me grounded. But I think you don't think about those kinds of things when you're first starting out.
Really appreciate you sharing that. And that's something I'm sure a lot of listeners struggle with. I definitely struggle with too, as any achievers out there. Is it's really trying to find that balance between the things that truly matter, those relationships, those things, but at the same time, we're not being honest with ourselves if we don't push for those things that have been put on our hearts and those things we're passionate about. So I think that it's a delicate balance, but like you said, being able to take some of those things with some humility, if your family says, hey, like we need you around more, not to get defensive or anything, but to have that humility and know where you're coming from with that. I think that's just some awesome takeaways from that.
Yeah, I really, just as you were talking as well, just makes me think of it, just like we've been talking about having a plan somewhat or thinking through things just a little bit. It's like so bottom line, it's going to get hard. It's going to be rough. You'll get stressed financially, relationships will get stressed. And what are you going to do about it? What's your plan? What are your outlets? What keep you going? What brings you happiness? Because you're going to need to keep it going for a long time. So those kinds of thought and mindset.
Yeah, and great reminders for whoever's listening. I know, being a Christian myself, rooted in faith is a big piece. Having relationships be a priority. Work is something we're both really passionate about, but none of those things on their own can take the place of what matters most too, of some of these other things that we love doing, but we have to put them in their place at the end of the day. And it doesn't mean we can't strive for excellence in those things, but knowing where they stand as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, awesome, Chris. I want to kind of summarize things here a little bit. There was a lot of good takeaways we went through here that you talked through, and I tried to pick the big three and want to see what you have to add here. So I think one of the big things we talked about. So for anyone in this profession or just in general, I think having a plan and the discipline to follow through that plan. So not just haphazardly picking things, not haphazardly going through things. I think second, I love the don't shoot for the minimum standard, crush it. I think that's something that we can apply to any area of our lives. And then I think a physical application would be starting with strength and range of motion. So I think a lot of people especially want to push too soon or maybe too much on the Metcon side of things. It's the conditioning side of things, the beat myself up side of things, but strength and range of motion definitely being two of those keystone things that are going to help with the resiliency, help with the performance, help with all those things that are needed across some of those other areas, and then layering in some of the conditioning on top of that. So I wrote down a lot of things. Those are three of the things that stood out to me. Would you have anything to add with those, Chris?
No, just I think whatever it is you're passionate about, for me, definitely it's the work that I do. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to do that. And then the fitness side, of course, most of all, I'm passionate about, the family. Of course, that's the top priority. But on the work side, that's my passion. So I've had a few years on, I just try to share and help out people behind me. And then same thing on the fitness side, I'm still learning a lot there, but I have learned a lot and I share it with folks. And so whatever it is that you're good at and you're passionate about, as you pick up things, just sharing it with people and helping out people that are into the same stuff as you, it's pretty fun.
Yeah, that's great. And we're gonna wrap things up here with the last question here. Going to ask you. So we're gonna say you're leaving a coffee shop. You run into your younger self. We'll say 20 years back. So Chris starting out his new career, and he's asking you for some life advice. You only have 60 seconds. You're on your way to an important thing with your family. You only have 60 seconds to talk to him. What are you going to say to him?
I guess I would say be confident in who you are. Keep doing what you're doing, keep pushing, but don't forget to like stop and look around, don't forget to stop and look around and take it in and enjoy it along the way. But, find just whatever you're passionate about, what you're going after, just keep going. You're going to be fine. You'll be good, but don't forget to stop and look around.
I love that. Gave me goosebumps. So appreciate you sharing that. Want to wrap up? Where can people find you? Where can they reach out to you if they want to get a hold of you?
So on Instagram, Prep and Defend, and then Venture Athlete. So spelled VenturaAthlete.com. And just program. I have programming there, and I just try to provide content for sure for the tactical athlete, and then also just mentoring. If you're trying to get in the fire service, you want to know how to prepare physically or some things. I'd be glad to help you out. And then especially leadership side, I'm really looking for some good leaders to tie in with on their organizations as we try to move forward and just provide more resources for all the folks that we work with, more the planning and things like that. So Prep and Defend on Instagram and Facebook, and then a YouTube channel as well.
Very cool, Chris. Appreciate you coming on. That was so great. I learned a lot, and I know the listeners will as well. So thanks so much for coming on.
All right. Thanks a lot. I really had a great time, and you have a great day.
Yeah, you too.